All right, Mom and Dad, your teens are welcome to go to the program we have for them, or you can keep them to help you understand what I'm about to say. All right? They can be your interpreters and translators. How's that? We're having a lot of fun with a series called What Happy Couples Know. We've been encouraging you to go out and have fun with your friends, your significant other, your wife, your husband, your spouses, going out together in group dates. And look at Instagram and Facebook is lighting up with people. Look at the handsome couples in that picture enjoying their evening together. Or you get a picture like this, right? Ooh, the Kellys. I got to tell you, Trish Kelly is winning the most faith nights out. She's taking advantage of the series, right? Then we've got wonderful group dates, people hanging out together. You even see the flashes in there who are in Madagascar. They've taken faith night to a real distance, okay? Or, this is one of my favorites. So this group posted in Facebook that the three couples represent 155 years of accumulated marriage. How's that? Isn't that amazing? So they win. They win. All right. We're going in a series about what happy couples know. We've been talking about how throughout life you kind of accumulate a box. It's got your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions. You bring them to your marriage with expectation. You're hoping that the box that you've been carrying your whole life, when you get married, right, you get a new box, you're hoping my stuff can get into that box. And sometimes when you approach marriage like a contract, you want to negotiate. How can I get as much of my stuff as possible out of my box into this box? And we may argue through that, we may negotiate, we may do a whole bunch of things just to try to get it all together, but it's all about my stuff in our box. And how we work that out. We propose that there's a different way of approaching that. We call it the unconditional love approach. It's inspired by Jesus. Jesus taught us by saying, as I've loved you, so you must love one another. The unconditional love approach to marriage is to love your spouse the way Jesus loves us. Instead of approaching saying, how can I get my stuff into our box, my hopes, my dreams, my ambitions, my expectations into our box, instead you approach by saying, let me see your box. How can I help you get your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions into our box? Is that realistic? Is that something I'm capable of doing? I want to help serve you. Now, in that box, if you've been raised in America or you are a living, breathing human being, is sex. Sex is in the box. And when happy couples come together, they have to take their hopes, their dreams, their ambitions, and their expectations about sex, and they have to figure out what they're going to do in their marriage. So happy couples know a couple of things we're going to start off with about sex. One is sex leads to babies. Maybe not everybody knows that, right? But clearly, sex does lead to babies, which, by the way, that's a picture of my very first grandchild, a grandson. How's that? Isn't that fun? Yes, sex leads to babies, all right? Sex also, let me do it this way. I'm going to take it as if we're doing a little bit of premarital together, okay? Because happy couples know something about sex that not everybody realizes. Okay, this is our home. And when I used to do premarital, I would think about the home, and I'd ask the couple, where do you think sex starts? Which feels like maybe, right? And the couples would take a look at this and they go, well, maybe sex starts in the bedroom. That's what most people think, right? I'm like, well, it can start in the bedroom, but that's not where I was thinking. It could go, you could say, well, it certainly leads to the nursery, yeah. And sometimes people get a little creative, like, well, there's a fireplace down there. So maybe we're thinking sex belongs down with a fireplace in. Things get a little hot, sparks will start a fire. I'm like, well, that's pretty poetic, but it's not what I was thinking. But yes, I would say sex starts in the kitchen. And when I'd ask, what do you think I mean by that? I still remember the one guy who looked at me and was like, I'm getting images of like pushing everything off the kitchen counter. And I was like, all right, let's stop there for a second and let's put a pin on that. All right? And maybe we'll come back to that. It's not exactly what I had in mind, but I do believe that sex starts in the kitchen. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look, and I'm going to talk about three things this morning. First, I'm going to talk about the very first reference in the Bible to sex. Second, I'm going to explain why I believe sex starts in the kitchen. And then we're going to wind up. I'm going to give you some tips to help you have good sex. How's that for church, right? And as uncomfortable as you feel you are right now, my sister is sitting in the front row. All right? So there's a little bit of awkwardness in that too. All right? God, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for getting an opportunity to talk about something that's a beautiful gift. And Lord, I pray that as we talk this out together, that your truth will come out in such a loving way that it's actually inspiring to people in a manner they didn't anticipate. So God, own the moment. You're the creator. You're the God of all living things and of all human beings. God, I love you, and I want you to have this moment. I don't want to be in your way. I want to yield so that you can speak clearly to people in such a manner that it changes our lives forever, because I believe that's what you're up to, aligning our lives to you, that we might know you for eternity. Amen. All right. So we've been using a curriculum based off of Andy Stanley, North Point Church, except this. Andy didn't talk about sex, right? Which, I don't want to brag about it, but maybe Andy's going to need to use my message by the time we're done. First 2 chapters of the Bible, what happy couples know is sex is good. And I mean that. Sex is good. Comes right out of the first couple of chapters of our Bible. The very first reference to sex is in the first 2 chapters of the Bible. God is creating all of creation. He's going through the stages of creation. And what the author of this passage tells us that every single stage to creation ends when God saw it and goes, it's good. There was one time and one time only in the whole creation account where God says something is not good, and I call it loneliness. He established Adam, and he gave Adam free reign. And he let Adam participate in sort of naming animals. It was a partnership of where Adam was exploring his need for companionship. And so God gives him the gift of companionship. He gives him a woman. It's in our own text. So God creates woman. The man says, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman. For she was taken out of man. You know why he called her woman? Because he looked at her and he went, whoa, man. Sorry, that's a dad joke, okay? So dads, you can feel free to use that. That's not licensed or copyrighted. Okay? But then the author goes on to say, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. And there it is. That's the first reference to sex in the Bible. What it is God has created human beings with complementary physical bodies. And when they come together in the act of sex, they're becoming one flesh, united together as one. And Adam and his wife were naked, and they felt no shame. And that's the beauty of it, that in God's intentions for creation, that there would be no shame around sex. It's a gift. It's a gift from the very beginning of time that God gave for human beings, and it's something that was meant to bring intimacy and beauty into the human relationships. God gave us sex because it's a good gift to build intimacy into a marriage. Humans made sex shameful. And that's how the story goes on, because the story goes on. As long as we're kind of like living with God in unity, God's the one who created life. And so when we live life God's way, we're actually living it as God intended, as the very creator intended. But when we take matters into our own hands when it comes to things of life, and we don't trust God in his wisdom and his provision for us and the direction and purpose he supplies for us, when we start to rebel against God and we make our own choices, we lead into what we call sin. Sin is the choice to not trust God, to break the boundaries that we have for a good life that he's established, to take these matters into our own hands. And that harmony which God has given us from the beginning of time gets broken, especially in marriage. It's mind-boggling that in this ancient document, tens of thousands of years old, that they have recognized that human beings brought dissension into the home. You will desire to control your husband, and he will rule over you. That's a statement about the impact of the human choice to sin, to walk away from God's design. It was a choice to bring dissension into the household, and that is a power control. This is what we talked about last week. When we approach marriage with the questions, who's in control? Who gets to choose? Who makes the decision? Who has the power? That's the focus of sin, of dissension. That's the conditional relationship. That's the contract marriage. Our decision to not trust God but to take matters to our own hands brings unfortunately brings dissension into our households. And this includes sex. When we use sex like a weapon, when we use it in a manner to get what we want out of somebody, when we use it as an enticement to get someone to do what we want to do, when we withhold it as punishment or as a means of trying to get the other person to give us what we want, we're manipulating a gift that God has given us. We're bringing dissension all the way down into one of our primary relationships, the only thing that we share with our spouse. We're taking something beautiful that was given to us and we're turning it into a manipulative tool to get what we want out of another person. Sex is meant to be a gift that God gives us to express unconditional love. Sex should enrich our marriage. When we enjoy it as God's designed, it is not shameful. Shame comes when we move in a direction outside God's plan. Unconditional love restores sex to a marriage as being good. What I want to do is I want to move us into a passage from our Bible. It comes out of a letter. It's not traditionally a passage that people think about when you talk about the subject of sex. It is a passage that talks about godly character and unconditional love. What we're going to see is that that this power of unconditional of our marriage, from the way we communicate to the way we manage conflict, the way we manage money, the way that we grow together spiritually, the way that we plan our lives, our future, and see our past, and the way that we use sex. All of it is impacted by unconditional love. So let's take a look. I'm going to read the whole passage, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to take it apart. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. Let's take this apart and see how it impacts even sex in a marriage. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, notice that Paul is making a series of statements. We call them conditional statements. They all begin with the word if. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if you any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one of mind, which is what you want for a marriage. You want to have a couple that have a shared joy that comes from a like-mindedness, from sharing a common, unconditional love with one another, of being united in spirit and mind. This is the idea of complete unity in the marriage relationship. And Paul's kind of given us some hints on how we get to this place of unity in a marriage. You take those if statements, you can turn them around into questions that you can use to think about your marriage. Do you have a unified approach to faith in your marriage? Think about that. How are you in your marriage? We've been talking about the unconditional love being the foundation of our marriage for a different approach to marriage. That's the love that comes from Jesus Christ. It's not a natural love. It's the love that flows from our relationship with Christ into our most intimate relationships, like the one that we have with our spouse. This unified approach to faith in our marriage means that we have one mind coming together into our marriage about our faith. I mentioned this last week, right? If you think that having different approaches to faith is going to be okay and you can work it out, you're bringing a struggle into your marriage. When you get married, think of it this way. It would do an illustration. You take a rope and you tie a man and a woman together. They are now one together. Okay? And now you say, okay, you're going to head off in a direction of life together. And let's put faith as a direction that you're going to head into. And let's pretend that faith in Jesus Christ is moving that way. And let's pretend that whatever you want to do with your religious practices, as long as it's not Christianity, is going in that direction. And then you say to the couple, move. And they're not going to get to where they want to be because they don't share a common direction to their lives. They're not united in their approach to faith. And that lack of unity in their approach to faith brings a tension that drives them off course and keeps them from being united. But when you're bound together in marriage and you're heading towards a common faith, then together you are walking together without the tension that would exist in between the two of you. That you are moving towards a common faith in which you approach. Two people committed to the unconditional love modeled after Jesus Christ, it brings strength into a marriage. Think about this question. Does your faith give you the strength and the joy to face life's challenges? When you come together in the common faith that you're practicing together as a couple, does this make you stronger? Are you able to face life's challenges with hope? Because this is where a common faith to marriage is important. Two people not just praying together, but for each other. Understanding that my strongest prayer partner is my spouse. And that as we pray for each other in this common pursuit of life together, I know that when I'm when I'm walking into a tough meeting, I know that when I've got to drive out to meet with someone, it's going to be a difficult conversation. I know when I get a problem I can't solve. I know that when we're facing something in life that's overwhelming to me, that my wife, Sheila, is praying for me. You know what that brings into my life? Strength. It gives me joy. It gives me peace. I have a sense of comfort knowing where that's coming from. This is the common coming together, and shared faith in our family has brought us strength to the way that we approach the challenges of life. How is God's presence present in your marriage? When is the last time somebody looked at you and said, "What's the secret to your marriage?" and gave you the opportunity to talk about your faith? When's the last time that somebody looked at you and talked about how your shared faith is admirable? When's the last time you had an opportunity to open up with somebody and talk about how the common commitment that you have in Jesus Christ with one another is giving a strength to your marriage? That's why they admire it. If you have children, do your children understand the power of faith in your marriage? How it's helped you throughout life? How it gives you direction and an ability to overcome? Is this shared faith something that other people see in your life? Would your partner say that tenderness and compassion describe the way that you treat them? Sarcasm is not tender or compassionate. Anger is not tender or compassionate. Selfishness is not tender or compassionate. A kind word, a tender touch, a thoughtful act, compassionate attention, these things are sexy. They're sexy because they build intimacy into your marriage. And when you have intimacy in your marriage, well, then let's just say sex, starts in the kitchen. It starts to move into your whole life, doesn't it? Because when you can look at these questions and you can see a reflection of your marriage, these questions, then sex just becomes a way of life. Intimacy is a way of life. It's how you approach your whole day. Think about it. It starts to play out into the kitchen. Do you spend time in a meal together talking about your partner's day? You're talking about your dreams, your ambitions for the future? Are you reflecting together onto the past? Do you serve one another's needs? Sometimes picking up the slack and cooking meals or going shopping or cleaning out afterwards. When you come home at the end of the day and you're putting your keys down under the counter, are you giving your spouse your time and your attention, truly listening to them? Do you pray together at the table? Do you talk about the faith that you two share as you face a challenge that you're trying to overcome? Do you talk about giving and generosity? Is the music that's playing in the kitchen as you're spending time together reflect your faith? Is there a little playful banter, some tender touches? Is there affectionate kisses, compliments about their appearance? If all that stuff is happening in your kitchen, well, let's just say it's going to be a good time. Because what happens here affects what happens here, shows up here. It just starts to fill your life, because it's not just about a singular act. It's about a lifestyle of intimacy that is evident in the way you hold someone's hand, in the way that you kiss them, in the way that you compliment them, in the tenderness that you have with one another. That climaxes in a moment, but is really built off of a relationship throughout the whole day. Sex is a part of our lives. And when we choose to follow Christ, his unconditional love flowing into our relationship touches every area of our marriage, including our sex life. Sex is an expression of unconditional love. It goes on because happy couples know sex is not about me. Sex is about my spouse. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of the others. Because when you approach sex from a position of unconditional love, it's not about what you get out of it. It's not about what you want. It's about putting value into the other person. So we talk about vain conceit. It's about guarding yourself against the vanity, the need to look good in order to feel significant. There's nothing wrong with looking good. But when you need to look good in order to feel significant, it's saying that there's something missing. That there's something in maybe your life or in your marriage that needs to be filled, where you need the attention of people outside of your marriage in order to feel significant about yourself. Can I just say that there is no such thing as innocent flirting when you're married? I'm not talking about with your spouse. I'm talking about with people outside your marriage. Why should my wife have to feel insecure about any of the time that I spend with a woman in my world? Why should she have to worry about me getting coffee? Why should she have to worry about if I have an appointment? Why should she have to worry about if I go shopping? Why should any of those things be of a concern to her? Why should she have an insecurity in her life because of me just living my life and walking through the world? This concept of innocent flirting, you know that every relationship starts with flirting, including adultery. The concept of innocent flirting, you should ask yourself the questions like, what is it that I need from this that I don't have in my life that this act is filling? What is it about the flirting that provides for me a sense of significance about myself, or that I want to have in my life in order to feel more excited? Maybe it's to feel more affirmed. If you've got this desire and this need for this type of activity, you can ask yourself, is there something in my marriage and my soul that needs to be filled, and how can I work on that? Because we've seen innocent flirting destroy relationships even in the church context. You're working together on the same ministry team. You start to make innocent comments or compliments. The texts begin to move away from information into more banter and conversation. You start to navigate to spend time after a ministry event or moment to spend time with another person. You begin to interact with them through email or phone calls. And next thing you know, what started off as innocent becomes disastrous because you're not protecting your marriage. You're not asking yourself, what is it that I'm trying to fill that I can't find in my life? As opposed to pulling back and saying, okay, this is telling me that there's a danger sign in my life that I need to address. How am I going to be able to protect my marriage and find my needs met? What type of conversation do I need to have with my spouse? And is this more about me than it is about anything or anyone around me? This is where the protective barriers around our marriage make a huge difference. You know, your spouse should never have to be affirmed of their appearance from someone else besides you. In other words, you should be their first and primary and most abundant source of compliment about their appearance, about their character, about their performance, about the things, the skills that they do, about what they're doing at work or they're doing it at home. You should be your spouse's biggest cheerleader, so that need is filled in the home and doesn't have a need that has to be filled somewhere outside the home. And in the same context, can I just say that your appearance should be something that you should want to look good for your spouse. You know this idea that we kind of look great every time we head out to work and then we look like we just crawled out from underneath a rock on the weekends, right? You know, where guys feel like I can give up shaving for the weekend because I'm just hanging out. I don't have to go to work. Or, you know, we choose not to take the shower that day because we're just hanging out at the house. Or vacation time, we look worse at vacation than we do when we go to work. What are we communicating when our spouse sees us dress up to go out, to go shopping, and we look better than we did that day that we spent at home? The love and concern that we have for our spouse means I want to look good for my spouse. I want to look my best, not just for those outside my marriage. Why wouldn't I want to look my best for those, for my wife in my marriage? Why shouldn't my appearance matter to her? Why can't I place it up like a protective barrier to help guard us? In humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. Sex isn't for you. Sex is a way for you to love your spouse. And the way that you have sex with your spouse should make your spouse feel valued by you. That's why I say sex should never hurt. How can you make a person feel valued and feel important if you hurt them? That's why I say pornography doesn't belong into a marriage, because pornography never makes your spouse walk away feeling more valuable. Pornography leaves the question, what is it about me that's lacking? What is it about our own sex life that isn't as good as that? Why am I not measuring up in order to satisfy like that medium is? Because we all know that it's actors in a controlled environment. It's not life. And why does that have to be what's most important? So that we would bring that into our marriage. Because then the question becomes, well, what about other times of the day or night? When I'm not present, what are you doing? It's in the same manner that open marriages and swinging, that doesn't make your spouse feel more valued. Your desire to want to have sex with people outside of your marriage actually makes your spouse feel less valued. What is wrong in our marriage? What is wrong in me that you can't find your fulfillment in me, but you have to go outside to find that fulfillment? You see, unconditional love is about helping the spouse feel more valuable, more valued, more precious, more unique. The way to guard your marriage and nurture your affection for your spouse should be an indicator of how much you value your spouse. Because unconditional love puts the interest of the spouse before your own. I said earlier that sex should never hurt because you should never hurt anyone that you love. There are times when sex does hurt. There are times because of the anatomy where the act of sex is painful. Not because you're trying to hurt somebody, but because the body hurts from it. And what about times of illness or injury where sex comes off the table or becomes painful? Or if you marry someone or some incident happens in life, some terrible thing where a past trauma now inserts itself into your marriage and rises up around sex. Do you love your spouse enough to come alongside them and accept them as they are and to commit to loving them the way that Christ loves you, to walk them through difficult times, to be faithful and dedicated to them even when you can't have your needs met? To be committed to their healing, to partner with God. If you've had a traumatic experience in your life of some form of sexual abuse and now you're married to this individual or this person, you have an opportunity to be healed, where the partners coming together, working alongside God, can come into each other's life and help this person find the healing that God has for them. With patience, with self-control, with kindness. You could be God's instrument to bring healing into your spouse's life. And you can experience that healing through that love. You're not bound to the experiences of your past like chains in a prison. Christ has come to set you free, and healing is possible. And are you committed to helping your spouse find that? Love also means putting your spouse's interests above your own. You know that sex helps recover from an argument, right? No? Is that new? Okay. So let me tell you this. If you've had an argument, sex is a great way to finish the argument. It's not a period at the end of a sentence. It's an exclamation point, right? And so God is giving you an opportunity to walk a little bit farther, because sex sometimes means putting your spouse's interest above your own. It's an expression of love. You ever heard there's these 5 love languages, right? Do we all kind of like receive love through different ways, like an act of service, an encouraging word, a gift? There's 5 of them. You can Google it. One of them is physical touch. You have the way of loving your spouse by the way that you touch them. You have the means of loving your spouse through sex. Because you understand that once you get married, you are the only person who can love your spouse that way. And shutting that off from your relationship is a way of diminishing love for that person. Instead of having the capability to fill their lives with love, you're now weakening their lives and diminishing them by pulling it off. Instead, by opening it up and loving your spouse through sex, you can actually make them feel fulfilled and stronger and more loved by you. It even means sometimes putting their interest before your own even means that sometimes you initiate or respond when you don't feel like it. Because it's an expression of love. And it might be a point in time where your spouse just needs that type of expression of love. Because it's a gift. Happy couples know that sex is good. I know that it isn't always good for couples. I know that when we talk about sex, we can raise up issues of infidelity, traumatic events that devastate and destroy. I mean, that's why we have a care ministry. We're talking about this issue as something that kind of stirs up negative emotions, bad memories, or hurt feelings. Maybe you need some help to just walk through those things. Like we've got programs like Celebrate Recovery that helps us overcome the hurts of our past. All you have to do is stop by the hub and we can connect you to the care ministry. And we can help you find pathways into healing so that Christ can bring healing into your life. So we've been giving you, at the end of these messages, we've been giving you some questions to take home with you. Just to kind of like think about throughout the course of the week to help you with your marriage. Like, how's the kitchen? Would your spouse say that you're tending to the relationship all day long in all areas of your life and not just in one spot? And how's your spouse feel? Does your spouse feel valued by you? Or are they starting to feel a bit diminished by the way you treat them? Because unconditional love is about making your spouse feel more valuable, not less valuable. God, I want to thank you for this time. God, I know that for some this is an awkward conversation. I know for some it has stirred up hurt emotions from their past. And so what I want to trust is that the work of your Spirit would bring a healing into this place. A refreshing of the soul, Father, that even in the discussion of a subject like sex, somebody could walk away discovering hope and could find direction for their lives that would bring healing. God, I just want to pray that we would become a people who live such great lives that when others look at our marriages and at our homes, that they sense the love of Jesus Christ in that marriage in such a way that it draws them to want to know more about our faith. I love you, Lord, and trust you. Amen.